We're going to discuss how Earth avoids destruction. Right? Whoa, that's pretty heavy. Well, many speak of utter destruction for planet Earth and all humanity. If you listen closely, they spoke about it last week. Climate change. We're going to kill ourselves, right? Every now and then you hear that there's an asteroid out there that's heading right towards Earth. And it could wipe us out, in 10,000 years. It's like, well, I don't think I'm going to worry about 10,000 years, But anyhow, lots of people talk about it. Some are hoping that they're going to be living on the planet Mars when this happens, right? So Earth gets destroyed, but they're up on Mars living happily ever after, right? I don't think so. Okay, the good news is that Jesus, who created planet Earth, has decided to prevent humans from destroying the planet. Jesus said this in Matthew 24:22. Unless those days would be shortened, cut short, no flesh would be saved alive. There'd be nothing left. We'd just blow ourselves off the earth. Jesus knew mankind would build enough nuclear bombs to totally destroy everything on earth. Now, anybody heard lately how many times we got nuclear weapons enough to how many times kill all humanity? I think I heard 10 times. We had, and that was many, many years ago. We've improved our equipment, right? It's more deadly now than it ever was. So back in those days when I heard it, it was like we have enough nuclear weapons to destroy the planet 10 times over. And you only have to do it once, right? So as humans approach that possibility, Jesus plans to take control of all human governments, right? And just scroll the sky back and come riding down on a white horse. We see that each year when we keep the Feast of Trumpets, and announce to the world that he's in charge now of everything. And the beast power says, no, you're not. And Jesus says, well, send your soldiers over here to Jerusalem and we'll talk about it for a couple of seconds, right? And then it'll all be over. So Jesus is showing us the countdown map and each step for saving planet Earth, and he does it in Leviticus 23. And most people go, no, it should be in the book of Revelation. No, he shows us on an annual basis by keeping his appointments, by going to and worshiping on special days where we focus our mind year after year after year after year on these major events of how he's going to save the planet. Most people do not diligently search to know exactly what the Jesus plan is. And most people, they can tell you like 2% of what Jesus taught. They can't tell you 80 or 90% because they don't diligently search and study it. Jesus created 4 worship meeting appointments to remind us every year of his plan. And every year his plan gets closer and closer and closer to the finish line and the new world, the new 1,000-year millennium peace on earth. These reminders have occurred every year since Moses. Now, very few people have been doing them, but they were there. God said, here it is. You have to bring yourself and be part of this worship system. And most people say, no thanks. That's old hat. I don't understand it. It's not for me. It's still God. God is up in heaven looking down and said, well, how many we got attending Feast of Trumpets this year? Oh, boy, that's not very many, is it? Oh, well. But his church will never die out, so there's still going to be somebody doing it. These reminders, like I say, have occurred every year since Moses. Now let's look at the first reminder appointment in Leviticus 23:24. Speak to the children of Israel, in the 7th month, on the first day of the month, shall be a Sabbath rest, a memorial of blowing trumpets, a holy convocation. The word memorial there, if you look up the Hebrew, it means the word memento, right? And what does memento mean? Well, an engagement ring is a memento reminder to everybody who sees that ring on the young lady's finger that she's soon going to be married. It's a future-looking memento reminder, not just a reminder of the past. The 4th of July is a reminder of the past, right? On the 4th of July, do you say, oh boy, next 4th of July in Jerusalem, right? The 4th of July doesn't remind you of something in the future. It just reminds you of something in the past. And it should remind you that the country was built on freedom, and we need to struggle to keep freedom, because we could lose it real easy. This annual reminder worship appointment focuses our mind forward to the day when Jesus returns and appears in the sky. Revelation 19:11. Now I saw heaven open, the sky gets to scroll back, and behold, a white horse, and he who sat on the white horse was called Faithful and True, and he judges and makes war. Now, sweetie Jesus, why would he want to come back and make war? Because humans are going to reject him, just like they do today. Only this time the beast power will have taken military control of the planet, and he'll be saying, my military is going to stop you, Jesus, from taking control of the planet, which is kind of like telling an angel, no, you can't do that. Angels are a different kind of beings. So next comes the second worship appointment service in Leviticus 23:26. And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, also in the 10th of the 7th month shall be the day of atonement. It shall be a holy convocation. You shall afflict your souls. Verse 28, and you shall do no work on the same day, for it is the day of atonement, to make an atonement for you before the Lord your God. At the start, making atonement, back in Leviticus 16, making atonement was one single day in the year to make an atonement for everybody in the nation of Israel. It wasn't you personally, it was the whole nation's collective sins of the last year were going to be wiped clean. And the nation was going to be at peace with God because they got a clean slate and they're starting over a whole new year, right? So there were other ways to make personal repentance and get personal atonement. And there's like 3 or 4 chapters in Deuteronomy that explain how you do that, right? So if you have sinned and you are sorry and you're repentant, then you went to the priest and he made an atonement for you on that day, whatever day of the year it was, and you went home forgiven. So there was a personal atonement system. Then there was this one day in the year, annual, the high priest makes an atonement. God is absolved, takes away all the sins, and now you're at peace with God starting out on a new year. So, and it was pictured by a goat carrying away from the nation all their wicked failures. And it was a great schooling thing for children. You could have the children, the little ones could be on your shoulders, and you could say, can you still see the goat? Yeah, I can still see the goat. He's getting near the top of the hill. Can you still see the goat? Yeah, they're on the top of the hill now. I can still see the goat. Okay, can you still see? I can see half the goat. Oh, so he's almost gone. Yeah. Okay. Oh, he's gone. I can't see the goat anymore. That goat took away all your sinful failings for everybody in the nation for last year. And now God's at peace with the nation of Israel. Okay, it's the same model, only it's the model for all of humanity up to, for the last 6,000 years, up to a couple of years ahead of us. So in modern times, this worship festival pictures our high priest. Who's that? Who's our high priest? Jesus, right? Okay. And we see a whole bunch of that in the book of Hebrews. Jesus is our high priest. And he's taking away all the world's sin makers, right, at Armageddon. So when Armageddon, the Battle of Armageddon is finished, all the sin makers are dead. All the warriors, all the generals, all of the killers, right? And God is now, his wrath is appeased. He's now at peace with planet Earth and what's left of humanity. And there's not going to be a lot of humanity left. The 200 million man army kills 1/3 of mankind at that present time. So then you've got 2/3 at that present time still alive, but you lost a whole bunch of earlier in World War III and the nuclear explosions, right? Zechariah 14:12. And this shall be the plague with which the Lord shall strike the people who fought against Jerusalem. Now you have to study the whole chapter to see, what do you mean who fought against Jerusalem? It was the Battle of Armageddon that they fought against Jerusalem. And he says, now this is what happens during the Battle of Armageddon, right? Their flesh shall dissolve while they stand on their feet. Now, they've probably made movies about this. I haven't seen them. It's kind of gruesome, right? But if the guy standing next to you, who's a warrior and he's got his AK-47 or whatever, right? And his flesh dissolves while he's standing on his feet. That's a little scary, right? Okay, and their eyes dissolve in their sockets. Ooh, that's even scarier, right? I like my eyes. Don't mess with my eyes, right? And their tongues dissolve in their mouths, right? It's because they've been lying. So Jesus destroys the armies of the Hitler-like beast power, after which all the wicked enemies of Christ are dead. We have brought to a screeching halt through the Battle of Armageddon all of the wickedness that we've come to so far and will increase in the years ahead and will be developed by the Hitler-like beast power person for 3.5 years. And then Christ says, that's it. It's done. Right? And the last of the 7 plagues doesn't explain very much. It just says, and he poured out his 7th bowl, and the words from heaven said, it is done. Get her done, and Jesus got her done. Right? They're finished. So Battle of Armageddon is over, and there's just dead people needing to be buried, sort of thing. So then Jesus will be at peace with the remnant of humanity. Next we look at the third worship appointment service in Leviticus 23:33. And Jesus spoke to Moses, saying, speak to the children of Israel on the 15th day of the 7th month is the Feast of Tabernacles, for 7 days to the Lord. This third worship festival during the 7th month of the Hebrew calendar is the flagship festival. This is the big one. This is the glory one. There's not a lot of glory. There's glory for you personally on trumpets, because you get to fly. You don't have to have wings. You just get to fly, because you'll have a spirit being body, right? And you're going to be so happy on that day. But the rest of the world won't be so happy, because they saw a whole bunch of dead people rise out of the cemeteries, and that's a little confusing, right? And then Jesus, they're firing rockets at Jesus on the white horse and all the angels on the white horse, and this big meeting of saints in the clouds, and they're firing missiles and nothing's happening. And this is obviously an attack from the aliens from Mars or from outer space or from someplace, right? But so trumpets is going to be a great day for church members who've been looking forward to that day. Atonement is going to be a pretty sad day for a lot of people who lived under the beast power rule, because it just destroyed everything, all of his armies. They're gone, right? And then this is the flagship. This is the Feast of Tabernacles, pointing to 1,000 years of peace on earth. Now, every year at Christmas time, if you accidentally hear the radio, they'll be singing about peace on earth and goodwill towards men. Have you ever seen any of that? Does anybody do any of that, or they just sing about that, right? It doesn't seem to happen very much, right? So at the future Feast of Tabernacles, the nations will appear in Jerusalem to worship King Jesus. in person, glowing, shining, radiating, right? Speaking as Jesus speaks, right? Giving the sermon at the Feast of Tabernacles, and to learn of his plans for the next 12 months. It's like an annual thing. Every year you come to the Feast of Tabernacles, you learn of the plans for the next year. And why do you not learn for the next 2 years? Because you're supposed to come back in a year and learn for the next year, right? Zechariah 14:16. It shall come to pass that everyone who is left of all the nations that came against Jerusalem, Armageddon, right, shall go up from year to year to worship the King, the Lord of hosts, Jesus, and to keep the Feast of Tabernacles. So the Feast of Tabernacles is like the 7-day gather together, the pilgrimage feast. The people all come together. They have extra money. They've been saving extra money with their second tithe. They come in and they live for like 7, 8, 9 days like people will live at peace and no police force. Right now, in this life, I am not saying we don't want to have a police force. Lots of people are saying get rid of the police. I'm not saying that. I'm saying let's reinforce the police for now. But in the millennium, in the 1,000 years, there'll be no visible police force, right? Until you're doing something wrong, right? And then we're given that scripture over, I think it's in Isaiah, that says, you know, your teachers will appear behind you, suddenly appear. And they'll say, that's not the right thing to do. This is the way, walk you in it or else. Now, I added the or else, right? But if you have a police force that suddenly appears and shining like an angel and says, hey, don't be doing that, it's like, is that going to be a little more powerful than seeing a police car coming down the highway? It's going to be a pretty powerful moment. All right, the fourth worship appointment service from the 7th month pictures the second general resurrection, which comes after the 1,000 years of peace on earth. Revelation 20 verse 4. And they lived and reigned with Christ for 1,000 years. That's the first resurrection people who were faithful to Christ. They abided, they learned, they practiced Jesus Christ thinking for in their lifetime, and they died whenever they died, faithful to Christ. Verse 5, but the rest of the dead. Now, this is one of my top favorite scriptures, because 2 billion Jesus following people today will tell you in roundabout ways there are no dead people, right? Because they are taught in church that if you're a good Jesus person, the instant you die, you enter heaven. You're up in heaven just the instant you die. You don't have to wait. Oh, wait, the Catholics have you wait a while somewhere, but let's not worry about them, right? Most everybody else is taught the instant the good Jesus person dies, boom, there they are in heaven. And they've got a happy, smiley, non-flesh body. They've got a spirit body somehow. Okay. If you're not a Jesus person, boom, the instant you died, you're in hell, suffering, torture. And there's no hope of you ever getting out of there. You are stuck there for generations, forever and ever and ever and ever and ever. You're going to be tortured, which is like mind-boggling. How's that going to work?
Except nobody ever tells you which person in their family that was.
That's right. You don't go to funerals where they say, last funeral they went to heaven, but this one we're sorry to say they're off to hell, because that doesn't work. Okay, so the rest of the dead, meaning there are dead people, meaning everybody who died is not in heaven, because Jesus said nobody is going to heaven. They went into the graves. Everybody is in the graves. God has their spirit, their memories, their being, their recollection of who they are. He has that stored in a safe place. It's never going to be destroyed until later if they refuse to obey Christ, right? And then he'll put it back in a body. He'll either put it back in a body on the first day of the 7th month on trumpets, when he puts if dead Church of God people, he puts their spirit back in a spirit being body, and they live forever. This is the second resurrection. This is all the people who died and went into the graves, and it says the rest of the dead people who are in the graves did not live again until the 1,000 years was finished. So you've got the beginning of the 1,000 years, you've got spirit beings who used to be humans who are now in the God family, and they have spirit being bodies. So that's one group, the God family. Then you have humans that lived through the tribulation period and into the beginning of the millennium, and they're human beings, and they will live in the millennium, and they'll have babies, and their babies will play on snakes' nests, and their babies will have lions for pets. I don't know. I want a small lion for my granddaughter or something. I wouldn't want a big, fat, heavy, 400-pound lion, because even though he's eating grass, he just might lie down on your granddaughter or something. But anyhow, so God is going to create a fabulous world of peace and joy and happiness for little children and teenage children and grown-up children. And at the end of the 1,000 years, he's going to have a second resurrection where all those people who didn't understand Christ, who lived all around the world long before there was a Christ, in Jerusalem, who died, and Chinese babies who lived and grew up and died and never heard of Jesus, they're all coming back, and he's going to give them a 100-year period to learn the first 4 from Leviticus 23, to learn Sabbath keeping, to learn Passover keeping, to learn unleavened bread keeping, and to learn Pentecost, or Holy Spirit practicing, right? So everybody gets to use the same first 4. This second 4, in the 7th month, all 4 of them in the 7th month, they show how Jesus has a plan for anybody and everybody who didn't make it into the first resurrection. And that is an incredible, merciful God who's doing that. So the rest of the dead do not live again, for the 1,000 years were finished. The 8th day worship festival shows our merciful God giving billions and billions and billions of people an opportunity to worship Jesus that they never knew. Most humans have no knowledge that Jesus will stop humans when they're getting close to destroying humanity, because God doesn't even come into their thinking in a lot of cases. Revelation 11:18. Your wrath has come and the time of the dead, and you should reward your servants, the prophets and the saints, and you should destroy those who destroy the earth. So when we get a few more years into the future, and we have detonated nuclear weapons, and we have, what's the difference between climate change the way they tell it now and climate change the way they tell it after there's been a nuclear war? Is a big difference, right? You can't live with radioactivity, right? Anyhow, so Jesus is coming back to destroy those who are destroying planet Earth, because he's got plans for planet Earth, and he doesn't want it destroyed. He wants people to live over into the 1,000 years. So every person could know Christ's countdown map for themselves for the next 1,100 years of human history. They could know that if they would just obey Jesus and worship him during the 4 7-month festivals in Leviticus 23. The 4 festivals promise us that Jesus will not allow humans to destroy planet